Alright, so that's pretty general. Now, what we have to recognize is the following point, right? As I said before, the linguistic community, and not just me, I justified it in Wittgenstein and Neo grammarians. Locke himself has said this, that language is a product of the linguistic community, right? Language develops out of this communal, the communal mandate, necessity to communicate, right, through language. We also showed that it's impossible, via Wittgenstein, for me to talk about my private language. There really is no such thing as my private language. And then I went and I spoke about, in previous videos, about even Descartes' attempt, not to knock him, but even Descartes' attempt to formulate the foundational claims of his cogito ergo sum, cogito, cogito, doesn't matter, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, is problematized by the fact that he can't create a system of methodological skepticism which is supposed to begin with just himself, because the words that he's using, I think therefore I am, is a product of community, right? So insofar as it's a product of community, you've already undermined your own analysis, your own critique. This comes via Lacan, which we'll get to later. So what we recognize is that there's the linguistic community, and it influences language. But insofar as it influences language, we have the linguist, and the linguist is going to, and I probably should have put on another piece here, the linguist is going to analyze language as the object. Right? So it's sort of, one, the linguistic community posits language. It allows for the development, the unfolding of language, and then the linguist has the ability to analyze language as the object of our study, right? Without the linguistic community and the role that language plays in the community, it would be impossible for the linguist to have, there would be no object of study, right? So this, the function of the linguist, the whole community, semiology, completely is eradicated once there is no linguistic community. Once this goes, all of this collapses, right? All of this structure is buttressed on the community. That's very, very, very important. Why? Because in the last video series, I did a 46-part video series on an introductory account to qualitative methods, various forms of qualitative methods research, and one of those methods of research is known as participatory action research. And in participatory action research, the objective of participatory action research is to participate in the community. And one of the sort of definitive features of participation in the community could be a linguistic sort of participation with the community. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it could be. So that there is huge, huge room for semiology, semiotic senses of meaning, semiotics within urban community. I mean, obviously I'm from the hood. I didn't grow up in the burbs, right? So it's very interesting to see how, like the role Ebonics plays within the community, the frequency with which the terms are interchanged very, very frequently, right? Within the African American community, when I came up, we used to call it whips. I mean, whips meant cars, but how did whips come to mean cars? And where did that, I mean, I think it really started with Wu-Tang Clan, but whatever. You can get pretty deep on this, right? Because it's not the individual that's creating this. I said this in previous videos. There isn't a change in the relationship between the sound and the idea that it represents via Locke. An individual doesn't create that. It's created collectively, communally. But the question is, well, why is it, and this is a very deep question, right? Why is it in primarily urban communities that the relationship between the sounds that we say and the concepts, the ideas that those sounds represent, why are they changed so quickly? I mean, it's like fashion, right? In the urban community, this is slang, right? One of the problems with slang, with urban vernacular, is that it really doesn't have any stable basis. So you might argue, and this is sort of outside of the scope of the lecture, but you guys said you wanted me to go deep, so I'm going to sort of stop at this point and give you an implication. You might formulate the argument that because there isn't a solidified basis linguistically within urban communities, the community is doomed to fail, to develop, because of this fundamental instability. If every other season I'm using different terms to describe a particular object and there isn't a continuity of terms to describe the object, then you can imagine the amount of confusion that it causes generationally, right? Not only the amount of confusion that this is like the game telephone that you play. I tell you a story, you tell somebody a story, by the time it gets down 500 people, it's totally different. Well, if in the 1950s, within the urban community, we used the word bad to mean literally bad, but then Michael Jackson comes around and he uses the word bad to mean good, and now, you know, you can see cognitively how this becomes problematic. So for all of you interested researchers, because I'm not going to do the research, but for all of you interested, eager graduate student, my legion, someone go out and do that research and publish that book. It would be amazing. I would love to read it. That needs, and I know for a fact that that doesn't, you know, that specific account doesn't exist, because I was looking into that primarily for my own research, as a facet of my own research. So it's important to recognize that when we're talking about the relationship between the community and the language, this is not an arbitrary relationship. The implications between the relationship that the individual has, any given individual within the community, is very, very significant, because without sort of linguistic roots, I mean, who am I? That becomes, and I'm not going to jump too far ahead, but you get the idea. Okay.